Everything is fine here on Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Mike, and holy crap, look who it is. It's Greg. How you doing, Gregory?
Doing all right. Forgot my drink. Hold on.
You know, necessities.
Now we're over by the mic so people can hear me. Yeah.
Good to see you,
so
bud.
It's good to be seen. Good to be seen. Yeah.
How was it you put it earlier today?
My Thrawn-esque return.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess
I noticed you went with the Thrawn route, not the Ezra route, huh?
I did.
Everyone wanted to see Thrawn, not Ezra.
I'm Thrawn, when his return, it's gonna be memorable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, was it for you? We'll dive into that later. But was Thrawn memorable for you in his return?
Yeah.
Some parts, yes. Some parts, not as much.
I don't really know what I was expecting. I mean, obviously, we're alluding to the Ahsoka series that just wrapped relatively recently. And I don't know what I was expecting. I know I was not expecting like a rehash of Rebels, and that Thrawn character. But hey, it was interesting. I saw some articles, I don't know if it was articles or, no, it was just social media. So yeah, the people
take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. And it was, like, they were so thankful for Ahsoka because the last one we got was Andor. And it was, oh, this is so much better than Andor. And I'm looking at it like, was it? It was more of a return to the Star Wars content that we're used to.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But I mean, it's better than Book of Boba. Like, I'll give you that. Yeah. But it was different than, yeah. And so I don't know exactly what I was expecting. It was a great show. I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to season 2, obviously, because of how they left off, season 1. But it felt like it stalled. Like there were moments of just stalling instead of, and part of that might be with the Mandalorian. There's very little like downside on those episodes. I mean, everything builds to something. It doesn't feel like there's like a stall or like a subplot that you're like, was that needed?
Right.
Like, you had, and I'm blanking on the character's name, but she, like her character, I guess maybe her, with the Night Watch, or not Night Watch, the Night Sisters.
Yeah.
Her character, and I guess
Morgan.
Yeah, where I guess her character, was the big role was to get to Thrawn's location, was to get the rescue party, quote unquote, to Thrawn's location, and then once she did that, she served her purpose.
Yeah.
But it was like once they were there, the character just kind of felt out of touch, and and that, like, all right, yeah, you introduced us to Thrawn, now there's no purpose for you, and
you're gone.
Yeah, and that's what they did. But otherwise, I'm interested to see where they take season 2. And unfortunately, with Rey's, was it Rey? Like with
Ray
with
Stevenson,
the
is that right?
Yeah.
Galen Skull.
Yep. With Rey's unfortunate, passing, his character obviously is, they'll find some way to respectfully write him off, but that was setting up to be really kind of cool. Like,
I know,
you have Balin and his apprentice, Ahsoka and her apprentice in the same galaxy.
Yeah,
that was gonna be cool.
I feel like that's something you can't just let go. You've got to find a way to continue that story, in my opinion.
Balin or like the apprentice? And
well, specifically Balin, because I think even in the show he alluded to that her route or her path is different from his. because he's like, this is where you go and, take your place in the empire. And like his path is taking him a different direction. And I think has to do with the Mortis gods and the Mortis trilogy that we've seen from Clone Wars, because those were the statues he was standing on. And it was pointing out to something out in the distance. So that was what was calling him. And I feel like it's like either the father, the son, the daughter, something along those lines, or something brand new, like the mother. I know there's been
well, it looked like the statue showed the father and the son.
Yeah.
I didn't see the daughter.
She was there, but her head was decapitated.
There, okay. That
So
I was gonna say,
it was destroyed, or there was destruction to it, but she was there. She was off to the father's right.
It was stage left.
Correct.
Like if you're looking at the screen, it was because he was on the father. Yeah. Like that was right in the middle. The son was to the right of the screen as you're watching. And then to the left, like I was looking for like a completed, okay, you see the father, you see the son, where's the daughter? And I guess I didn't look that closely. Like once I didn't see like the face, I was like, well, where the hell's the daughter?
Right. And maybe that's intentional, because going back to that Mortis trilogy, the father died because he was looking for Anakin to kind of take over for him. He did the new balance in the Force. The daughter died because she sacrificed herself to save Ahsoka, and then the son, got away or whatnot. So I'm just thinking this now. Maybe it's intentional that the head was decapitated. Maybe that's the son. Maybe the son is what's calling out to Balin, and
that dark side.
Yeah, and he destroyed or decapitated the head of the daughter because she ruined his plans or whatnot. So
that could be.
He's calling out to Balin, and that's the path that leads before him. Who knows? I don't. That's purely speculation.
Dave Filoni knows.
Oh, he for surely knows. And I mean, maybe it's something completely different too. I mean, maybe we're led to believe it's one thing and it's going to be something completely different.
I mean, that's probably what it is. Let's be real.
I know a lot of people keep talking about Abeloth, which is the mother, because we never really got much.
No, you never see her. Yeah,
of her, who was, if you go to the expanded universe, like, or Legends or whatnot, that's where she's found. She's not found in anything canon, but she was a human. I think she was like a servant for the trilogy or whatnot. Okay. And then something happened and she got disbanded, or I forget, but then she became immortal and she became like the strongest one of all. And Luke Skywalker ends up like fighting her and is the closest thing to getting her to death, but she can't be killed. She just transforms into something new, I think. But I don't know if Dave Filoni would go that far and bring in something from Legends that far out. But
that might be a tough reach on it.
Stranger things have happened, but I don't.
It's true.
But yeah, so we're gonna spend most of this time talking Ahsoka, getting Greg's perspective, since we're all waiting and eagerly wanting to know what your opinions of it are. Before we jump into that, though, what have you been up to? Where you been? How you been doing?
Jeez, I don't. When was the last time? It's been a few months, eh?
I can check. Let's see. When was the last?
I mean, it's my goodness. Was my son even born? Were our kids?
I don't think our kids were born yet.
So that takes us back to at least like early May. Half a year closing in. I mean, our kids are getting on 5 months. For those that don't know, Mike and I have sons that are 3 weeks apart. So mine's closing in on a month old or 5 months old next week.
Okay.
It'll be next week, Tuesday, he will be 5 months old.
How's he doing?
He's doing good. Yeah, we had all that, labor, pregnancy scare stuff with, the cisterna magna, which is fluid in the brain for those of you that didn't go to medical school or Google. But he had that. He had some slight the regurgitation with the tricuspid valve. And so that is now mild. So now he's doing good, kind of blabbing away. And
that's what JJ's been doing a lot lately. He's been
he's
finding his voice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
So then you just respond mimicking what they say.
Oh yeah. And unfortunately for me, little Braxton takes after his dad and doesn't really have good volume control.
Who, Greg? No.
Yeah. So he will.
You listeners would never know by this podcast, but Greg has quite the volume.
We can get it up there. Yeah,
you can find him in any crowded place if he just starts talking.
Truth be told, part of that is we podcast after our kids go to bed. So you got to be quiet.
Maybe that's strategic by us.
That's probably, kind of keeps you, keeps us
reel you in a little bit.
Because I tell you, if we podcasted and I had an empty house or just the dogs in the house, might be a little different. But I've got a sleeping wife, I've got a sleeping daughter, I've got a sleeping son. The older dog is sleeping too, I guarantee it. But yeah, like
did you ever watch King of Queens?
Yeah.
Are you pretty familiar with like some of the episodes in that show?
Some of them, yeah.
Do you remember when Kevin James how he celebrates when they get rid of the father-in-law for a while? He goes off to working at like a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what he does? What he dreams of doing? And then it shows him doing it.
No. Well, no.
He's like, no. I just want to eat pizza. I want to walk around the house naked. And I just want to, and then they pan to him like, you're outside his house looking through the window and he's jumping on his couch naked eating pizza like this.
Yep. I mean,
that's what I'm envisioning Greg doing.
Oh God, that'd be great. Well, we still need, what would be really good is if we planned it out, we kind of got away and we were able to in the same room. That's where the volume control would really be gone. Like where I lose complete control of volume is sporting events, whether I'm at them or watching them. I mean,
guilty.
Little known fact, folks, but the officials and coaches can hear you through the TV. As long as you face the correct direction
and speak loud enough,
and you have to tilt your head at a 37-degree angle, not 36, not 38. It's got to be 37.
More, no less.
And
3 is the number you shall count to.
And that's how they get you. So sporting events, volume control, and then just around friends. And I mean, and then if you add alcohol, then it's
essentially when you're in a comfortable setting, that's when loud Greg comes out.
It is.
Because around your family, it's the same way too.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's not a consistent loud.
No.
I mean, it's not a consistent level of loud. I mean, it is loud. Like in those settings, I'm loud.
To the average human being, it's always loud. But to your it's loud and then louder and then ridiculous.
That's it. There is no whisper. Like my whisper is somebody's outside voice. That's just how I am. And
you're pretty much we're listening to your whisper right now.
Yeah. And I think part of the problem is I spent almost a decade working in like automotive auction, the automotive auction business. And so I'm in the lanes and it's just, you can't hear anything. So I think I'm going deaf. At least I tell my wife that when she tells me the same thing, you were
allowed back in high school.
No, that was just me finding my voice. Now I think it's legitimate.
I think your family, you've got some loud talkers in your family.
Oh,
So
my
yeah.
mom, my
Your
mom's a
dad
loud
is your
talker. And
dad is the silent type, and then your mom is the.
it's funny though, because my dad can get loud.
Oh yeah, he can get
Like
loud.
for our family parties, my dad will be the master of ceremony. And that, like, our family Christmas party, and it's on my dad's side, and it is massive. I mean, my dad's one of five, but like the party is his. So it's on my grandma's side of the family, and my grandma was one of eight, seven or eight, something like that. I mean, this was back in the day when you needed all hands on deck on the farm, so you were just popping them out, and so she had eight. Well, then they all had like four or five kids. So now all of a sudden, I mean, think
You've
about
got a large family.
eight. You have eight siblings, all have five. If they all had five kids, that's 40. Just kids. Then they all get married, so to speak. That's 80. Then they have kids. I mean, we got a couple hundred and that. And my dad's the MC, so he will get up there. Hey, can everybody hear me? And yeah, we can hear. So the volume, I get my volume from my dad. I get the lack of control from my mom.
Yeah, your family's so large that when you've got a family reunion together, if you went to an unincorporated town, you would all of a sudden turn it incorporated.
Oh yeah. Yep. I mean, it's pretty big. So but we have our fun. But yeah, it's a loud talking family, loud, and a lot of hand gestures. And now, in my aunt's defense, her hand gestures are just her using sign language because she's deaf, but everybody else talks with hands. So
and you definitely do that.
Oh yeah. Yep.
If your mouth wasn't enough, your hands come into.
You gotta make sure people understand.
I just thought of something I was going to say, but I totally forgot. So if I stop in the middle of whatever we're talking about, it's because I remembered.
Okay.
It's bugging me now, though. Something else I thought of. So congratulations to your brother Eric for a hole-in-one, because you were talking about your dad, and he posted that on Facebook.
Yep.
I almost commented it and tagged you in on it because he was running through everyone in your family. So and so got one on this day. So got one on that day. And I was about to be like, Greg, where's your mention?
Yep. I think I posted something on there
like that.
Yes, I mean, it was something to the effect of, I better start practicing, or something, because it's like, I don't have one. Josh has one, Eric has one, Dad has one. But I also don't golf. I mean,
as much as they do
nowadays. I probably do, just because family and work, and but yeah, I mean, it was for a while there. My younger brother, he works in the car business, and so he would go into work at, say, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and then he'd work until 7, 8 o'clock at night or whatever. Well, he would go golf by him. He'd go golf by himself from 7, and he'd get 18 holes in like 3 hours, because he's flying as a solo. So from like 7 to 10, he golfs, and then he'd shoot over. Yeah. And and he would do that a couple of times a week. And so I mean, he was golfing 3, 4, 5 rounds a week. It's like, well, yeah, you're gonna get better, or you're gonna I mean, you're either gonna get better at golfing or drinking, one of the two. Yeah. And he got better at golfing.
It's never both, right? It's one or the other.
Well, no, because not many people possess the skill of John Daly, where you can be a all-time great golfer while you're just completely in the bag. Like, not many people. Most people have to keep a relatively decent level of soberness on, so they know what the heck they're doing, and then they can. It's like, you remember in college when we held that pool table at the bar for like hours. because
yeah.
we were in that zone. We
Yeah.
had just, we had just enough alcohol in us that we were making shots that we had no business making. And then we took one too many shots, and it's like we had never played the game before.
Good old library in
Oh,
dinky
love it.
town near the
Yep.
U of M University of Minnesota campus.
That one was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, that what I mean, we did pretty well typically in pool.
We
Um when we would play other people in the bar, but nothing like that one particularly. we weren't missing shots at all.
No, and I'm just like, because we would do pretty good where you win a game, maybe 2 games in a row, and then you'd end up losing, and
Yeah.
we wouldn't get blown out. You'd lose by a couple, a ball or two or something like that. Close game. But I mean, this one, it wasn't close. Like, I mean, we were blowing guys out, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
It's one of those times where you're like inside, you're like, what the heck is going on? You're kind of like freaking out, but you're trying to be cool on the outside, but you still got a little like groove to your step as you're walking around the pool table. Like, I know what I'm doing.
That was it. Yeah. You're like, all right, cool. And I mean, we were playing for drinks too. So I was like, wow, I like this because now is a cheap night at the bar. Not that it was expensive, a
$5 domestics or $5 Long Island's, dollar domestics, right?
$1 rails, $1 domestics, $5
Long Island, which were the strongest Long Islands you had ever had.
Was it a $5 Long Island?
It's either 5 or 3.
I thought it was 3, but then you always end up paying 5 because you just give them a $2 tip. Yeah. I didn't have that too much. I would either do beer or the whiskey sours.
Okay, that's right. I forgot about the dollar rails too.
Yeah, dollar. That was for the dangerous. Although the rail drink was, you'd have a cup like this size.
Yeah,
I mean, that's your rail drink. You're like,
you might as well get the beer.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, you remember the at Brothers downtown, they had where you could do the Jaeger bomb shots.
Oh yeah,
and it was like the medicine cup.
Yep.
That you'd get. Yeah, like that's what the shot was, but it was $1. You're like, I'm not gonna remember this night. Slap a 20 down there. Half is for you, half is for my drinks. Here we go. And you're taking 10 of them in a matter of 5 minutes. Boom, 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 boom.
Tomorrow Greg's problem.
Yep.
And Brothers, it was darts, right? We did play a little pool maybe there, but
we did a lot of darts there. We didn't do as much. We did a little bit of pool, but yeah, mainly darts.
Yeah, because we had a dartboard where we lived.
Yeah.
And was that the penthouse that we had the dartboard? No, we had it. That was before you moved in, actually, I think. That might have been at our other
We had the
place.
ping pong table.
We had the ping pong table. Oh, so beer pong, we became ringers at too.
Oh, it's dangerous.
And then we had it at the house too.
Yeah.
We did have the dartboard at the penthouse. I do remember it.
Yeah.
It was to the left of the couch. If you're looking at the couch, it was to the left of the couch.
Yeah, we had, yeah.
Yeah, you're getting a little insight from the way back days for
That's
Greg
right.
and Mike.
Yeah. It's almost 20 years ago now.
Isn't that sad, man?
Jesus.
Oh, let's not get into that.
We're getting old.
Yeah, our older brothers turned 40 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Scary, man.
Yeah.
All right.
If we're keeping score by math, we round up, we're 42. Ridiculous.
Yeah, right.
40 as well. I'm not 42.
Yeah. I mean, because we're going to be 38, and that you might as well call it 40.
Yeah. No.
Your birthday's not too far away, and then mine shortly after.
Yeah, still got 2 months.
Yeah. Good old December 28th.
That's right.
All right, so we'll kind of dive into some Star Wars stuff now. Just as a reminder, we are live, so come bring us your questions, comments, opinions, any of it. We'll bring you into the show just as much as we are, and we love little distractions.
Tell us about a night where you just destroyed a bar game, like owned a game for an entire night.
Or if you just did terrible. Might make for a more funny story too.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. No, I want to hear, or like if there was like an epic, like fall off, like ran the board for 2.5 hours, and then all of a sudden I started hitting the wall, and
This sounds like a Packers or a Brewers season, you know.
it's true.
Well, not the Packers this year. They're not starting strong, but
No, they are not.
they've got some youth, so we'll give it a couple of years. The Bucks, though, I'm sporting them. They had their game opener, and they won that, or season opener, and they won today. So happy about that. All right, so just a couple of news bits, and then, like I said, let's spend the time talking Ahsoka. So what I have here first, a couple of video game updates. So Outlaws, Star Wars Outlaws has been pushed to 2024. So, you know, same song, different verse. These things keep happening, keep getting pushed back. And I don't know if I believe this or not. I don't know if it's an excuse, but maybe it's true. So according to Star Wars Newsnet, in an earnings figure report, video game publisher Ubisoft stated that it is releasing a large game, quote unquote, thought to be Star Wars Outlaws at a later date in 2024. Initial early reports hinted at a target date of early 2024, possibly around March. The new report from Ubisoft now suggests Star Wars Outlaws will be released sometime later in fiscal year 2024-2025. In the just released earnings figure from Ubisoft, the report goes over the company's financial performance for fiscal year 23-24. The report states great financial confidence for the rest of the year. Because of this, Ubisoft announced the decision to move a large game to fiscal year 24-25 to maximize its value creation. I'm trying to follow that. Like, why would having a good year, you would want to push that out?
Because if you've already had a good year, like, you've already hit your number, so to speak. And that, I mean, if they, all right, like, we wanted to hit growth of 20%, and we're already at 23%. So even if you go down these last 2 months, you're still gonna, have it. So instead of piling on, and all right, hey, instead of, hey, you know what, we made revenue of $10 million. Okay, well, instead of making revenue of $20 million this year, that you're banking on this game taking off and really doing well next year. So instead of those numbers hitting this year, you hold off, you take that 10 million in the bank, pocket it, and then the other 10 million then goes to your bottom line next year. So now it, instead of it looking like, well, you made 20 million in 2023, you made 7 million or 5 million in 2024. Like, what, no, we made 10, like, it, kind of keeps it consistent with everything, for budgets and that. I mean,
Sure.
that's what I could see them, kind of doing is, hey, there's, what's the purpose of, of rushing it? Now, I think
Right.
that, part of it, I don't understand why they wouldn't release it around like the holiday timeframe in December to get that push and then carry it into 2024. But I also don't know how all the financials that,
Right.
and what does their, what is their like fiscal year? Do they use, because
That's
I
another
know
question.
companies will have fiscal years where it's, well, the fiscal year ends March 30th, March 31st.
That's like us. We end at the end of January, not at the end of December.
Yeah. We've switched it up, but we used to do the fiscal year ended June 30th.
Okay.
So that's so
Middle of the year.
Yeah, but it will affect. It's like, okay, well, you might, it's like, well, do we want to push this to July? No, we want to get that in. It needs to be gone by June so we can get it into this fiscal year. We don't want it in next year. Or just kick it down the road a couple of weeks, and we'll put it, we'll kick off next year's fiscal year with solid numbers that we can then build off of. So that's that would be my guess as far as why they're doing it, is that it has to do something with, I mean, if they've already had a good year this year and you're expecting good things out of this game, and from everything you hear, sounds like there's demand for it. There's gonna be it, it should take off and help make their year. Maybe put it into 24 to buffer, to make sure that you've got a solid year.
And I mean, to your earlier point, because it says now release sometime later in fiscal year 2024-25. So that tells me that's a holiday season release. If you're going later in the year 24-25, that's probably like a November release to hit that holiday sales.
I mean, potentially, or that wording. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, it could just be like like when you look at like a school year, or you brought up the Bucks, the season. Well, it's a 23-24 season,
right?
And now it starts here in late October. But when you think of like the school year, the 23-24 school year, well, it started in August for like most schools, August, September, and then but then it rolls through. So that might that terminology might be that, hey, like our fiscal year isn't Jan 1 to December 31st. It's whatever you have, it carries,
it goes
over
from that December to January mark at some point.
Starts in one year, ends in another calendar year, but it's all one fiscal year. So I personally believe it's probably going to be like a post Labor Day release, having pushed it.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would wait until like November, December timeframe. But I mean, are you going? I don't know. Are you going to release this video game in the middle of spring?
Probably not, because people tend to go outside more.
Yeah, but
but then students are home from school though, so
the other release date, I mean, maybe they're gonna do something on May 4th.
It's another option.
Yeah.
But I think you're right in terms of, if they're doing this way, they must expect that it'll be very successful or bring in money. My only question is, like, don't you earn more money by getting more money sooner? If that makes sense. Because like let's say you're a bank and you bring in money, and then you earn interest on the money that's sitting there. Like, why wouldn't you want to bring it in as soon as you can if it's ready? Like, obviously the game has to be ready through all the bugs and everything for it to be the most successful.
Yeah.
Which is my feeling of what plays a part of this. Like, just pushing something back also tells me it's not ready.
It's not perfect. There are some bugs. One
way or another. Sure. I mean, having the success in this year might allow for them to be like, okay, we can push it to, to be a little later because we're already doing okay. But it just tells me that it's not the whole story, because I feel like if you're a company, you want that money as soon as you can so that you can invest that to make more money and then invest it in development to do other major projects. Because the longer you put resources into one game, the more money you're spending. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I get, the other thing I wonder is, because of the size and scope of this game.
Yeah. A lot of kinks that got to be worked out.
Well, there's that, but then you also have to look and see, the server size that Ubisoft has. Yeah. Now, I would assume, given the company, they're not a startup. Let's be real. Like you would assume that, but I also don't know what this undertaking is. So maybe they've got to try to get some more servers like online, or because you take a game out there and then all of a sudden there's buffer and there's any kind of little hiccup, everybody's going online.
Yeah.
I mean, to Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, X, Twitter, whatever, Snapchat, they're like everybody is going to some social media site and just going to shred the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
And so you don't want, like if you release it now and by January it is shredded, do you want that, or do you wait a couple months and try to limit that exposure?
And see, that's what I think it more is.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. All right. So the other video game announcement, Star Wars Dark Forces Remastered, announces its release date of February 28th, 2024. I didn't even know they were doing this. Like, I see something where it was like originally announced for like August or no, this past August, they originally announced the release. They didn't have
it'll arrive February 28th.
Yeah, February 28th, 2024. I remember playing this game. I played it on the PC like way back in the day. The graphics are terrible, but the game was just awesome because like it was just during a time where there wasn't much Star Wars out there. I mean, there was like the original trilogy. I don't think the prequels were even out yet.
When this came out?
When Dark Forces came out. I want to say it was like mid 90s, maybe late 90s. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, we're going to try to.
And like
1995.
Yeah. So mid 90s.
And it was really for the MS DOS and Macintosh.
Yeah.
MS DOS.
Yeah.
Okay, kids. Here's what
they don't know what that is.
Oh God, no.
Do you know what a floppy disk is? Well, that's what this game was on.
It's not because of too much alcohol.
But yeah, I remember playing this game. It was awesome.
Then I went to PlayStation in 96.
I never played it on PlayStation. I just played it on PC or DOS or no, we had a Macintosh. So I played it on Macintosh.
Oh, Macintosh in the mid 90s. Look at you.
Yeah, but it wasn't the same as it is today. It wasn't like Apple products. I mean, it was the same thing.
I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure Macintosh is an Apple product.
Yeah, but I don't think they were called Apple back then. They were just called Macintosh. I know there was an Apple.
The Mac, short for Macintosh, is a family of personal computers designed and marketed by Apple Inc. That's where you get MacBook, all of that.
Yep.
But no, it was there.
We had
I don't think it was like Apple's Macintosh. It was just the Mac, Macintosh.
Yep. That was our first computer. It was like a Macintosh. I remember when we got it. Was
it because of the commercial? Did your dad watch the commercial with like the sledgehammer getting thrown through the screen?
I don't remember that commercial. I probably, if I saw it, I would.
Dude, it's a famous. Yeah, it's this lady running. And she's going through whatever, and she's in like that 1980s workout unitard deal or whatever.
Yeah.
And goes and throws and crashes because Macintosh was making a new computer. It was completely different. It was breaking the mold.
Okay.
But that was it. There were as far as I remember, there were no words in the commercial. There was like music playing, this chick running, and a sledgehammer through glass. And then Macintosh. Like, what the
what did I just watch?
What did I just watch? Yeah, that was back when you had to watch commercials. I mean, I guess you didn't have to, but that was like bathroom break time, or you couldn't pause. You didn't pause life, kids. All right.
Couldn't fast forward, can't rewind, no replay. Well, wasn't sports just starting to implement like replay into?
Not really.
Was that more
like the NFL? Maybe. Are you talking like for like the viewer to see?
For viewers, yeah.
Yeah, it probably was in like the mid. It probably was like in like the 90s ish or something like that.
Yeah,
Um.
because I remember that being big. Like once they would start showing replays of
Oh
the
yeah, yeah. Hey,
plays.
let's look at this play again. You're like,
Yeah,
what is
that's
going
when
on
John
here?
Madden would bring out the thing, and
Yeah, boom, tough acting
yeah,
connected.
yeah.
All right, John.
Brett Favre.
But yeah, just crazy, man. You have to run to the fridge. That's there are comedians that joke about it, but it was legit, man.
Yeah,
Like, you get to that commercial. I mean, the end of the episode wasn't like they weren't even airing the first commercial yet. Like your episode was done and it was playing like the we're going to commercial type of setup, and you're run, grab, jumping over stuff. Like, what are you doing?
back in the days when cartoons were actually
Trying to get a
good.
juice box.
Cartoons were good. The commercials were pretty good. They were pretty
Yeah.
corny, but maybe it's
Yeah.
just because I was a kid and all the commercials I paid attention to were the toy commercials, and you're like, ooh.
Well, those were target market, man. That was those were all the commercials that
Yep.
they had were we're gonna get the kids, because then the kids are gonna go, Mom, I need this toy.
And then you get the toy.
Yeah. And then 3 days later, toy's broken.
Yeah, so Star Wars Newsnet says the remaster, which introduced fan favorite character Kyle Katarn, who single-handedly took down an Imperial plot in the wake of the first Death Star's destruction. The game will feature all 14 levels of the original, which took the player across the galaxy from the scum and villainy of Nar Shaddaa to the Imperial capital of Coruscant. The player would tangle with fearsome enemies, including Boba Fett, while taking down the ultimate threat of the Dark Trooper program. So I have to imagine they're going to bring it to today's standards of graphics. And I hope they implement a little more bad guys, because if I remember correctly, like the best part was like fighting, like shooting or the stormtroopers and stuff, but there just weren't that many of them around.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was just probably restrictions of what video games could do at that time. So
I don't know, man. Duke Nukem had a ton of bad guys. It was like
every time
you turned around, there would be bad guys that would spawn. You're like, don't turn around, man. Okay, the 57 people you just killed are going to be right there.
The graphics of that game is like a spitting image of Dark Forces. So imagine Duke Nukem with like Star Wars and like stormtroopers and stuff like that.
The blocks, fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Is that a monster, or is this very pixelated? I can't tell. I'm just gonna shoot at it anyway.
Is that a pixelated wall or? Oh God, it's shooting at me. Nope, not a wall.
Oh my God, that was a great game. Yeah, so those are the news bits I have. So let's go back to how we started today's recording, and let's talk some more Ahsoka. What kind of things stood out to you about the show? Because so you already made the comment, or I'm assessing from your comments, that you liked Andor more than you liked Ahsoka.
I liked the story that was told through the episodes of Andor. Yeah.
So not to like play favorites or anything, because you also spoke to the Mandalorian. Of those three, like what order would you put them in?
Oh man.
I know it's hard because like, to at least from my eyes, like Andor was the better like quality product, like great story, great acting.
Yeah.
Everything just seemed fantastic about the actual product you got. Did it feel less Star Wars than the others? Sure. It did. I mean, not that you have to have Jedi or Sith or lightsabers to have anything Star Wars. I think it's great that they're kind of bringing in material that kind of is something other than that kind of stuff. And they brought it in a good way. But Star Wars was definitely more felt through Ahsoka, and probably more felt through Mandalorian versus Andor.
But here's my when did Mandalorian start to feel more Star Wars? Was it did it feel real Star Wars in that first season, or was it when they brought in like Luke and they started to tie into the Star Wars saga that people know of? I'm not saying that it wasn't entertaining from the beginning, because it was, but as far as having that Star Wars feel, when did it sink in? Yeah, because
For
I
me,
think that
for
I think
me, or is
that's
that a question to the
huh?
listener? For me, or was that a question to the listeners?
Both. I mean, if there's listeners that want to chime in on it, let us know. But it's an open ended. I mean, it's just so yeah. I mean, for you, when did was it from the first episode or early on in season one that it felt Star Wars, or
More than Andor, yes, from early on. And I think for me, I mean, I think we're familiar with Mandalorians,
Mhm.
so you're already kind of given that sense, because he shows up in the opening scene. He comes to that bar. Not to mention we've already seen, trailers or
Yeah,
advertisements, so you're familiar with what Mandalorians are. You had like the creature feature type things, like those monsters that are big, so you kind of got a sense there. To your point, I think it felt more Star Wars when you got, towards the middle of the season. You started getting stormtroopers, TIE fighters towards the end. You had the dark saber at the end. Um, you had like a bunch of Imperials. So, I mean, by the end of the season one, you definitely
hmm,
felt more sense of Star Wars. I think the other part of it too is it's a space fantasy that's kind of Western feel. And that was like the original intention of
yeah,
Star Wars. It's kind of a Western samurai sci-fi thing mixed all together.
yeah.
You don't get that sense from Andor.
No,
You
no, no, no. You don't. It's it's very much
real world
a
feeling in Andor.
real world, um,
Not the MTV show Real World, but
like
like
it's kind of like a political
yeah,
drama esque. I'm
yeah,
trying to think of like what a good is, like the ones that pop in like Designated Survivor and like West Wing were like the two like for political that jumped in right away, and I was like, well, it's not really like the West Wing, but
right.
but it had that more political flavor to it. And then yeah, I think you definitely, to your point, Mandalorian was a Western, and instead of set in Tombstone, Arizona, or Deadwood, it was set in a galaxy far, far away.
And you really get that the first episode of season 2 when we meet Cobb Vanth, and they're literally like in
Yeah.
a Western space town.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's you had that, but I think yeah, like kind of to your point was it took you had the Mandalorian, were there, but really, your interaction with them, if you didn't watch the cartoons, your real interaction with the Mandalorians was what, Boba Fett as a Mandalorian. Like
Right.
you didn't have a lot, so
True.
it depended on how deep you dove into the well of Star Wars
True.
prior to the Mandalorian. Now you and I, we've watched Rebels and Clone Wars, so you can see the Mandalorians and that history. But once you brought in Star Wars, Darksaber, and the lore that has been accepted for ages, that hey, this is Star Wars. Once you get Stormtrooper, Star Wars,
Yeah.
and that, so it connected to in your mind, and Ahsoka right from the very beginning kind of connected. So I think that's why it felt from the
Yeah.
very beginning Star Wars. But I really enjoyed the fact that Andor shows a different side of Star Wars, because in my mind, as long as it connects to the overarching story and theme of Star Wars, we're made to believe that the like the galaxy or galaxies in Star Wars are massive. Why then are we focusing in on just a tiny, tiny little bit, like a little
Right.
sliver? Not speaking, ill of
Right.
the Star Wars saga. Love it. Grew up on it. Show my kids. They don't really pay attention, but it's on. Yeah, but but it's so I enjoyed that. That all right, this will connect, but it's a different way of telling the story. It's happening concurrently with the Star Wars saga. Show that side of it. I mean that was kind of similar to Rogue One. It was a little different than what you were seeing.
Yeah.
And that
And I think Rogue One did a good job of pulling in elements of Star Wars. Probably more towards the middle and ending of it, especially with the battle, because that battle
yeah.
felt
Oh
Star Wars. I think for me, and I know Dustin speaks a lot about this, and I think this is what makes or breaks shows for him outside of like having good villains, captivating villains and characters. I think suspension of disbelief. We were talking about we're getting closer to 40. I feel like as I've grown older, like that plays an important role in what I enjoy. Like if I can envision this being like something actually happening or like actual conversations that would take place, then I have a tendency to gravitate towards it more. And I feel like that's what Andor was. Like that just seemed like a real situation, real stakes,
yeah.
just more believable of a story. And that's not to say like, I mean, obviously Star Wars is fantasy and, flying around in outer space and everything is just not in terms of what we have technological
Yeah.
in today's world. But you can still assess things to be like, is this a little far-fetched or is this believable? And let's go back to the Book of Boba Fett show, those speeders that are just like barely moving, like that just does not seem
Yeah.
believable. So
Yeah. A high speed 1 mile an hour
yeah,
chase. Like,
yeah, exactly. um and I have to remember too, like I'm not necessarily the target audience for all this. Everyone's the target audience, and it's Disney, so they're gonna bring it down more to a younger age. They want younger ages to be able to watch it as well. And the younger you are, you have a tendency to have a better imagination, or not better, just you use your imagination a lot more than us
yeah.
adults. So I think that's the problem I face. And I feel like for Ahsoka, for most of the show, it was believable. It was a believable Star Wars story. Um, I know you weren't on, but in earlier episodes, like reviews, like the first 6 episodes to me were amazing. Like I did have a couple of issues with like the first 2, like the dialogue seemed very like not accurate. I don't know. It just seemed like too many dramatic pauses and,
Yeah.
it didn't flow very well. Like the story, the action, the character, like everything else seemed like fantastic. Like
Yeah.
was great. But I just kept getting stuck in the dialogue a little bit. After episode 2, then like 3 through 6, quality Star Wars product. And then the last 2 episodes to me, they were still good, but it started to fall off a little bit for me. Like that, going back to that suspension of disbelief, it just didn't seem as believable the last couple of episodes.
Yeah.
But, so to me, like I put Andor is my top in terms of Star Wars shows, just because the quality and everything. And then I would probably put seasons 1 through 2 of Mandalorian next, and then Ahsoka, and then season 3 of Mandalorian.
Mhm.
That would probably be my order.
Yeah. Well, I think kind of piggybacking off of you and going, to your point of as we've gotten older, when you're younger, the lightsaber battle, the blasters, the that kind of sizzle, it grabs your attention. You're that's awesome. That'd be cool because that's where you'd want to be. Like, oh, I'd want to, just let me fight that. That'd be great. As we get older, it's okay. Now give me the substance. Yeah. Give me the steak, not just the sizzle.
Yeah.
And so give me that good solid dialogue. Give me a scenario where I can envision, oh yeah, like this would be, this would be it. Now if it ends up in a fight, it ends up in a fight. But give me the cerebral part of the critical thinking portion of Star Wars. And so I enjoyed Andor. I think for me, season 1 of The Mandalorian had a lot of great aspects. So I'd probably put that one above Andor.
Okay.
Because it's funny. I'll probably make like a basically a Mandalorian sandwich because it would be like I'd probably go Mandalorian season 1, Andor season 2, Ahsoka season 3.
Okay.
Because season 3.
So you got 3 pieces of bread, and they're all the Mandalorian holding the Ahsoka Andor sandwich.
Yeah, that's it's a double decker sandwich.
Yeah. So what about the Ahsoka show puts it where it's at?
At number at the 4th one on there.
Yeah.
There was portions of the dialogue that just didn't connect. And then I just I think the last 2 episodes, kind of like the last episode, like the Night Sisters, all of a sudden now they're going to create these zombie they made it past it. Okay, zombies. Like, really? That's what you're going off of? Like, you can't find something else that they so it just, there were small, and it's very small stuff. It's not like
it's nitpicking stuff for you.
Yeah. And it's all personal preference as far as the deals. I enjoyed having Anakin in doing that training. I think the relationship between us, at times it just, it was weird, like the how they tried to portray us. So like I just like Ahsoka and Sabine, like their relationship just seemed a little weird.
Yep.
And it really kind of at times a little like disjointed because too many characters trying to get you to invest emotionally in too many characters. Because you had Balin and his apprentice, and it was they're going to be something, and then they got to the different galaxy and they just kind of we completely forgot to write anything for them. I don't know, have them ride something off into
In the last episode, were you getting worried if Balin would even show up?
A little bit, yeah,
because they didn't really show any of them until that scene we were referencing.
Yeah, that was
standing on the mountain, and you're like, all right, this is the last episode of the season, and we've got 10 minutes left to go.
Yeah. Oh shit, he hasn't been. I don't know. Go stand over there. Someone, look serious. Like part of me is going, well, shit. Like if he's not in an episode, kind of, like, all right, he passed, but it's not like you got to write him off because you already did.
So was he kind of the most fascinating portion, or maybe not the best part, but like the most interesting character for you?
It felt for me, it felt like when you first met him, I mean, he was dark side.
Yeah.
And then, and maybe again, I was misreading it, but it felt like he, with Ahsoka there, and as things kind of started to progress, that he's like, "Am I on the right side? Like, did I make a wrong decision?" Yeah, like it felt like maybe he was going to atone for past decisions and come back to, maybe not come back to the light side, but join Ahsoka as that gray Jedi that kind of floats between the two.
Yeah. So
So
do you think that's what he is? Like, do you think he's a bad guy? Do you think he's a good guy? Do you think he's something? I mean, obviously he's something in the middle, or
I
maybe not. Maybe obviously is not the right word. Maybe he's
I oh, yeah, I benefit of the doubt. I think that his character arc ultimately, you know, lands him in that gray Jedi, because not he's not the goody good guy that's going to stay a Jedi, because he's not going to be like, he is going to be controlled by emotion and certain things that take him from that Jedi spot, but he isn't as far gone as you need to be Sith.
yeah.
So I think he floats between where he will have maybe make Sith like decisions, but so like in the moment zoomed in, it's that was pretty Sithy. But when you zoom out, it's, oh, you did that to do this, and this is very good. Okay, never mind. Yeah.
So
So
it's like the
bad
end,
things for good reasons. Yeah.
the ends justify the means.
Yeah. Yep. And so I think that's where his character arc would have ultimately gone, if we were able to see it all the way through. And that was the feeling that I got some of the conversations he had with his apprentice and just how they kind of portrayed him on the screen.
Yeah.
But I would have loved to have seen his character. The apprentice that he had, I think, could have waited, like what they did with her was enough for season 1.
Yeah. Yep.
Very good character. Bring her back season 2, let her grow.
I agree.
But I felt like they didn't shortchange the character, and they also didn't dilute the character by having her on too much, doing too much. Like when she was on, it was served a purpose. So
Yeah.
I liked that.
And she did an awesome portrayal of the character.
Oh yeah, she was fantastic.
Spot on. Great job.
Yeah. Thrawn was good. Wasn't really expecting more out of him. I kind of liked that, kind of, again, that cerebral assassin, the mind games, where, like there was that one scene where, there's the fight, and then he lets him go. Why'd you let him go? Well, because we weren't looking for a battle. What we were looking to do was
Get
time.
out of here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we cost Ahsoka the one thing she couldn't afford to lose: time. Look, while they were fighting, we're this much closer to being ready. Yeah. And it was like, you son of a gun.
See, and I know there's been some complaints about Thrawn, but I guess, well, then I could argue myself. I was going to say, if I had one complaint on Thrawn based off of like my image of Thrawn, it's that he's not I don't picture him as actually being a bad guy. I know Rebels, he was kind of more of a bad guy, but if you read the books and you get more content of him, he's just more, his overall objective originally was to like save his species, the Chiss, and that means was going through the Empire and whatnot. But I guess there were elements of like not being a bad guy in this, because he didn't want to sacrifice troops if they didn't really need to. And then there's also that scene where they are going to sacrifice troops, where Morgan Elsbeth is like recruiting them into making that sacrifice. And then he goes up to Morgan and he's like, well, do they know? Like, are they aware of what's about to happen? And she's like, yeah, I warned them. So that's showing that he cares about, like, one way or another, the people. Like, they're willingly doing this. It's not like we're going to be traitors and just set them out on their deathbed. They know that they're sacrificing themselves in this situation. And that's kind of the Thrawn I envision. He's just a military
That's it. Yeah.
in my eyes. But I was happy with Thrawn's character in this. To be honest, we got more of him than I actually anticipated in a season 1 of this show. I thought we would only get him like towards the end, maybe the last 2 episodes, but we got 3 pretty much full episodes of him.
Yeah.
So I got my fill.
I fully expected it to be like Ahsoka, Baylan, and that battle, and then Thrawn would then make his return. They'd figure out however they did it, they would do it. And Thrawn's return, the last 2 episodes. All right, he returns. Now you got to try to figure it out. And then it leads into season 2 of, all right, well, now we're battling Thrawn. You go. Whereas, the way that they ended it, I thought was fantastic. Although I do question, and I will be interested to see how they answer it in season 2, but Ezra escaped on Thrawn's ship, right?
Yep.
Okay. So he steals a
shuttle,
steals a ship to then make his return to Hera. How does he get away from Thrawn with that ship? One, how does he get away? Or 2, does Thrawn let him go, track him, and now Thrawn's got the location of Hera and the rebels, or whatever they're calling themselves nowadays.
I think it's that.
Because Thrawn is always portrayed to be this incredible military mind that is 2-3 steps ahead of every opponent.
Yep.
How does Ezra escape Thrawn's ship? Yep. And it's not that Thrawn doesn't know that he's on the ship. He knows he's on the ship.
Well, and they already know. They're light on the number of stormtroopers they have, because that's why they didn't want to go. They didn't want to use stormtroopers to go fight off Ahsoka and them, because their objective was just to get out of there, and they don't want to waste troopers if they don't need to. So resources are thin in terms of the manpower that they have. So you would think that Thrawn would be aware of a shuttle leaving, which takes manpower from his Star Destroyer. So I think you're onto something. I think he knows, and I think it's a means to get to the group.
Yeah, so I'll be,
because they didn't show how he escaped.
No,
so
they just showed him,
and that's probably intentional too. They're going to be like,
how does he escape?
We'll reveal that in the next season.
Yep. Yeah, and then how do Ahsoka, and I think we've talked about it. How do Ahsoka and Sabine make their way back to
if
help?
They even do.
That's do they? Yeah, so some good questions to it, but there were portions that were just it was like Ahsoka kind of, and maybe I'm in the minority on this, but Ahsoka doing that training and with Anakin walking around her. I enjoyed having the Anakin, hologram. That was kind of cool. But like the training session, just just the character, how they kind of portrayed Ahsoka isn't what I have like in my mind. It felt like she was like she had really gone like dark place. Like yeah.
Well, and this is no knock on like Rosario Dawson by any means. But it just seemed like the character was old, like in their combat. Because
Yeah.
you're so used to Ahsoka being like, snips, being like so agile and, really fast and doing flips and all that kind of stuff. And of course,
Mhm.
that's coming from an animated show. So there's a benefit to doing, lightsaber duels and everything in animation versus live action.
Yeah.
But that was one thing that was taking me away from the belief portion of it. Was like it does not seem like so maybe that was part of the intention.
It might be, yeah. But yeah, it felt like, man, we're watching the Obi-Wan Vader fight from
Yeah,
A New Hope all
a,
over again.
a little bit like that. A little bit like that. But I mean, and they would show Sabine, and she was, quick to shooting and
Mhm.
whatnot. But then when it would go to Ahsoka, it was like everything's just a little bit slower. So
There was a little bit, and again, it's nitpicking, but
nitpicking.
the fact is that the series wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was an A. It definitely got an A, but
Yep.
there were areas that that could have improved. And I think because of that, that's where like I looked, for like the nitpicking, it felt like there were more areas that could have or should have been improved in Ahsoka than there were in Mandalorian season 2.
Sure.
And like season 1 for me of Mandalorian was amazing because of new, new story, new characters introduced.
Mm-hmm.
The progression of the story, how it went, that was really kind of cool. Andor introduced you again to a few characters that that you knew. Told a different side of the Star Wars story. Still kind of kept you in that realm of where we've lived before. So I mean, you kind of knew, okay, this is where it connects to other parts of the Star Wars story that we've been told.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was on that more critical thinking side. So really, really well done. And again, from episode 1 to the last, from the first to the last episode, the story that it told, each episode felt like it was important to telling that story. There wasn't that filler. Just, let's get them through this week into next week because next week's really going to be great. No.
Yeah.
Like I want really good, every week.
And
Yeah.
I will say to the Ahsoka show, that's something I really liked, was that every episode seemed important in the story that was being
Oh,
told.
yeah.
Whether or not it was done 100% or not, that's kind of what we've been debating here.
The overarching
This,
story
and that's
of
what
each episode.
Mhm. That's what Dave Filoni does great.
Yeah.
Story writing. Like
I mean, every single detail, every scene of the episode may not have been necessary. Yeah, like I mean, but every episode in Ahsoka, led to the next one.
it progressed the story.
Yeah. And I think it's as you were going along, each episode progressed the story, but did so in a way that when the episode was over, you're like, I gotta wait.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't really want to. I want to see.
And that's how I was for sure the first 6 episodes. I'm like,
Yeah.
gosh darn it, I have to wait another week for this.
Yeah. So I mean, there was that, and it was those are the stories that you enjoy because you carry it through, and and then you look and compare. I mean, everything will get compared to Book of Boba. Yeah. just because that is now the bar that you have to, it's a low bar, but that's the one that, as long as it's better than it, because that's where, the Book of Boba at times felt disjointed.
I just wish they would, for that show, would stick with the theme or the pace, the story that they were going with in those first 2 episodes.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
with the Tusken
Completely
Raiders,
agree.
like that was the direction they should have gone.
Mhm.
Like that was fascinating.
Yep.
And then you get into the middle of that season and then you bring in like Mandalorian. Like, of course, I love watching Mandalorian, and people jokingly call it Mandalorian season 2.5. Those were great episodes, but like it didn't feel like the story that was supposed to come into. And I mean, that's our own perspectives. We're not the one writing this, but if I'm watching the Book of Boba, I want it to be about Boba.
Yeah.
And 2 of those episodes were like purely Mandalorian. And it's
Boba's in at like the end. He's in like 5 minutes of a 50-minute, show.
Yeah.
So
but
then
that
that's
Tusken Raider story was fascinating.
Oh
like,
my
I
gosh.
love that.
It was amazing. Yeah.
And then I'm like, where are we going now? It's like, then you've got that high speed Vespa chase that's low speed, and
there were, it was disjointed, but I think there were multiple directors, if I'm not mistaken. And there
were multiple directors in Ahsoka, but there was one writer. So I think that's what was.
I think that's, you've got a couple of, like, if you've got multiple writers and multiple directors, then it's kind of that recipe for a disjointed season, because now you're going to try to match up way too many people's visions.
Yeah.
Whereas if you could have multiple writers and then one director, because that one director is going to take what the writers provide and unify that vision into theirs. And so you'll have that kind of continuity between episodes, or you have the one writer that writes the dialogue and gives the story, and then the directors take that outline and kind of flush it out and put it onto the screen, but you still again have that continuity. And that, when you're looking at TV series like these, you need them to have that continuous flow episode to episode.
See, and I agree, but I'm going to be even more selfish. And I think they need to go 1-1. If you want a coherent
a single
story,
director and a single writer.
I think that's the best way to go about it. I mean, look at even the sequel trilogy, like how disjointed that was, having different people at the helms. I mean, it's kind of a similar situation there. I think if you have one writer and multiple directors, or if you have one director and multiple writers, I think there's more of a flow to it than having multiple of everything. But I think the closer you get to a 1-1, the better it could potentially be. Now, it could be risky though, because like, what happens if like they just don't get like Star Wars fans or storytelling? Like, they put all their eggs in one basket and it was a flop. And it's like, okay, if it's bad, it's going to be really bad, and it's not going to be good throughout the whole season. So I see the benefit in having, multiples of one, but I think you need to take that risk. And I think a coherent story is, like, in my eyes, what's more important. So like, give me Dave Filoni writing it, and then give me
Jon Favreau
directing it, or something like
or
that.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Give it, just Deborah Chow, just give me one, and let them sit down and just plan the whole thing out, and then bring it to life.
I mean, that's the key is, you get that storyboard. That's what you want, because these episodes, they need to flow together.
Yep.
For these particular episodes. I mean, obviously, if you have an animated show, or I mean, they've all been animated. The one that, like, I'm thinking, like Visions. Like
anime.
Yeah, you're gonna get, but the live action, you're not doing one off. It's telling a story. And now, we forgot in our list, because we went Mandalorian, Andor, Ahsoka, Kenobi.
Are you asking where I would put that?
Where do you put Kenobi in there?
See, Kenobi, to me, it's like the sense of Star Wars was there. I enjoyed the acting. There's a lot of it that I enjoyed, but I think the actual product is what fell flat to me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That one is just, it's hard to pinpoint what kind of brings that one down for me. I don't know. I would put that one probably, it's above season 3. So me, the bottom of the barrel is probably Book of Boba Fett, and then maybe season 3 of Mandalorian. I think I would put this one, like, you could interchange it with Ahsoka in my eyes, like 1A or 1B, which would come above those. And then it would be seasons 1 and 2 of Mandalorian, and then Andor at the top.
Yeah.
But I would probably put Ahsoka maybe above Kenobi. And I don't know if it's, I think Kenobi, there's a bigger story to be told there, and it being more of a mini series pigeonholed them to like how much they could actually bring out with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like the lights, like that whole interaction between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi, like that was amazing. Like that final episode, I could watch that over and over and over and over again.
That scene's in the running for one of the best scenes in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
I'm not talking Disney Plus, series. I'm talking
everything,
all the movies, like everything.
Yep. Yep. And they introduced some awesome elements. Like I want to know more about the path, which, you know, where he saw like Quinlan's signature or whatever. Like it's kind of like an underground railroad for Jedi. Like that's fascinating to me. Like tell me more about that. Let's see where this goes.
Right? Like let's get that Grease song. Tell me more, tell me more.
Exactly. But I think, to me, when I'm watching that show, it seems like it was always filmed in a small room. Like, you know, they're going through that base where the rebels are hiding, and they're shooting at each other, and no one hits anyone yet. It's like very small space. And then even the duels, it's like it just feels very condensed. So I don't know if it's just like camera work or the visuals we were getting, and they showed like those, remember the snow or I know they weren't on snow, but from Empire Strikes Back, you got the land speeder or the air speeder things. And those came and they like rescued Obi-Wan and Leia, and I forget the Imperial that they were with, that was, you know, kind of a mole. Like that CGI was terrible. Like those things seemed very small.
Yeah.
So it's just that believability, like that suspension of disbelief, like just wasn't as much there for me in that show. The story was great, some really good elements in it. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know, Ewan McGregor, Hayden Christensen, like give me them in Star Wars and I'm happy. The acting was great in it, but just the execution of it is kind of what fell short for me. What about you? Where would you put that one?
Same. I mean, it's above season 3, but it's, you know, below Ahsoka. I'd put it. Yeah.
Okay. So what is it about season 2 of Mandalorian that drops it from season 1?
I mean, it's just, you know, Andor being there.
Andor is that good that it just.
Yeah. Like you know, like you have Andor number 1 and then and I just, for me, for me, it felt like you had portions of that critical thinking and like, that like political aspect
Yeah.
of Andor in season 1 of Mandalorian, while also having like the action sequences.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, like I really, I enjoyed that. And it felt like, so he was around, the child was around, baby Yoda,
Yep.
was around, but like, he wasn't like, I don't know. It felt like he got for, the more into the seasons, like he was just forced down, like,
Yeah.
season 1. Hey, he's just along for the ride. Mandalorian's like, well, shit, like, all right, I got to get him here. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to do, no, I can't let you do that. Like now, I thought I could just, set him and forget him. Can't do it. Yeah. So yeah, it just, there were aspects of season 1. It felt like it had a lot of what I was looking for in Star Wars, which is that, you know, critical thinking, like, the political side where you look at it and you're like, okay, what are they trying? Does this have deeper meaning? Like, what are they trying to, what in our life are they trying to speak to
Right.
with this and that? And then, yeah, then you have the, your action scenes with, the, the fights with the ships and, like, so it just, and the fact that season 1 took, introduced you to a whole new like style of Star Wars stories that really hasn't, didn't, on its, like, as far as you knew originally, it didn't have any connection to
Yeah.
the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
Like you didn't really know that until later. And so this was a brand new Star Wars story, and it was really well told. I enjoyed every episode of it. And so that's why that one kind of puts it number, and to Mandalorian. I mean, it's Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So
He's a badass.
I mean, that's where it puts it number 1. And then, Andor, to all the points that you had made, the action, the continuity of the story, just the story itself was amazing. The suspension of disbelief, like you could put yourself in there. I mean, it was
you could put
really,
that story outside of Star Wars setting and it would still be just as
oh
good.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it fantastic. I mean, so I really enjoyed that one. And then, you had Mandalorian season 2, and then I'd go, Ahsoka over, Kenobi.
Kenobi.
Yeah. And it, like, I mean, it's nitpicking, but, and then, yeah, season 3 of Mandalorian is going to come in
I,
last.
I almost think there are elements of Mandalorian season 3 that fall lower than Book of Boba Fett. But I think as its entirety, I think Book of Boba Fett
Yeah. I
falls
could,
under season 3 of
yeah,
Mandalorian.
I could see that. Yeah.
There were
But
just some episodes in that season 3 that's like, what are we doing here? Like
yep.
we
And
don't need
that's,
this.
no, and that's when you're looking at, the filler episodes. It's like you don't need a filler episode. I mean, if this was going to be a 20 episode series, okay, maybe then you'd have 1 or 2 filler episodes, because it's like, well, guys, this is 20. Like, yeah, like, we're going to have 2 or 3 where, I don't know, for 40 minutes, you're just going to see them riding on like a ship, and that's going to be it. Just, no, and that's it. That's all you're going to see. Like, conversation, nothing major is going to happen. They're just going to go because they got to get from one planet to the next, and we don't know how to write it. Like, so we're just going to put it out there, and so like that would make sense. But when you're dealing with 7, 8 episodes, they all have to hit.
Yeah. I really wish, again, it's not my story to tell, so I can't, I have to let it go. But I really wish they would have left Grogu at the end of season 2 with Luke Skywalker, and then just continue Din's
Agreed.
story without.
Completely agree.
Because the further away we get from what we've gotten out of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, the further away we get from it, the more it seems like they're like, we got to bring Grogu back in somehow. So then in Book of Boba Fett, they, insert those 2 episodes in a way to bring Grogu back to make it logical on why he's in the story again for season 3.
Yeah, it just.
But even in season 3, he just seemed like he was there, like not really.
That one definitely felt like it was like Jon Favreau, like, fine, you guys want him in?
Yeah, and I really believe those rumors that like he didn't want Grogu in there, but then like Disney is like, well, we need the merchandise, so he's gonna be in there.
Yeah.
So that's really what it feels like, and it kind of was hindering the story a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then because they bring Grogu back, then they have to bring like the Skywalker story back, which is to what you were talking about, because Mandalorian was kind of away from that whole Skywalker thing. It made it, in your eyes, almost better.
Yeah.
And I think what they did with Luke Skywalker at the end of season 2, like that's enough. Like it explains Grogu, and then he's going off to training. So you're not really, you're overlapping a little bit, making a little connecting point,
which
but
is
but the
fine.
story isn't about Luke by any means.
Yeah.
Now it is.
Yeah. And it's fine to overlap them. I get that. I'm not expecting it to like be completely broken off.
Right.
But he doesn't need to be the focal point.
Right.
And I get, I mean, this is that opinion may not sit well with a number of individuals, but the fact is that the Skywalker saga and the characters that we have grown to love don't always need to be the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with introducing new characters and allowing them to grow. They just have to do it in like the right way. Yeah.
And to kind of segue from that, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that brings kind of a point I want to get to, or a question that I want to bring up. This whole concept of introducing a brand new galaxy to Star Wars through the Ahsoka show. Like that really opens the door for what they can do in terms of stories that go away from the whole Skywalker trilogy or Skywalker stuff, or anything that we know. Like you also were talking about how expansive Star Wars is, and original trilogy might be like this much and you want to see more, and that's what Andor did. Like this opens up a whole new door to that. Do you like that concept? Do you like where this could lead to? Are you nervous about what it could lead to? What are your thoughts of what we've known thus far is just now definitely minute compared to where we go?
I'm not nervous. I am intrigued by where like the storytellers, and I think and they'll never do it, but because it's not in canon. But like you could, like I think by expanding the universe, it opens you up to bringing more of the books and comic books, those stories in to the screen medium, whether whether it's a big screen or the Disney Plus small screen.
Yeah,
something like it opens it up. And for me, I hold a optimistic view that the right people will take this opportunity and kind of create a story that is worth telling, because that would be one of my fears, is because now it's just open-ended. You're going to get somebody is going to take some storyline, some plot that they come up with. Well, this isn't set in the Star Wars or the Skywalker galaxy. This is set in this galaxy. So it's in Star Wars. And now you've got a story that gets put out there. And realistically, you're like, this is not a good story for whatever. I mean, a myriad of reasons, but it's not it's not a good story. And it kind of, dilutes, the Star Wars, pool. And you just, now all of a sudden there's that bad taste, and now Star Wars, now you have to, or it's now because someone messed it up. If it's the first go round, well, now no, listen, everything has to revolve around that Skywalker saga because we can't go out. Nobody wants us to go out now. Like, so I'm a little nervous about what stories get told in that galaxy. But I do hold optimism that the right people will take it and run with it, i.e. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. They will, they can take that and, hey, here's a story from a galaxy that, you may not know, but it's still going to be great. Yeah. I mean, George Lucas created a galaxy that nobody knew existed 50 years ago. Not quite 50 yet, but we're getting there.
We're getting there.
But 40 plus years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was, created this galaxy that nobody knew existed. And everybody, except not everybody, but I mean, you get it, it was accepted. It was widely accepted, this premise. My fear is that Star Wars fans won't be open-minded enough to accept another galaxy and the stories that can come from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a fear that I have. But if you are open-minded, there are a lot of creative individuals with connections to, Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see them be able to take their own story and tell it, because right now, anytime you're dealing with anything connected to the Skywalker saga, all you're doing is taking from George Lucas. I mean, you're taking right from George Lucas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, you're kind of trying to put your spin on George Lucas's story.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point, because it makes me think of our conversation, multiple directors, multiple writers. They're all creative people, right? They all have to put in their own individual elements to it, which is why you get dysfunction stories, because they need to put their name in it somehow and change it up a little bit. That's what I like about this new galaxy, because I feel like, I mean, I'm sure there's multiple reasons behind this first season of Ahsoka. Like, it's leading a story one way. It's, it's also building blocks towards the sequel trilogy, kind of filling in some questions and gaps between the original trilogy and sequel trilogy. But I think one of the intentions of this was to bring about this new galaxy that could be used for like a testing ground for stories. All right, we don't want to bring in like the expanded universe or Legends. We don't want to just make that canon, but we can use this new galaxy to kind of have other stories that are similar to it and see how it's received by fans. And then based off of that, we know what to bring towards the galaxy that we all know and really care about.
Yep.
So I really feel it's kind of like a testing ground. So pretty smart, pretty intelligent to do that. Going to the laws of physics, for every action, there's also a reaction. My hesitation to that, though, is that it dilutes the stakes from our original galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Because, how big and how important did those moments of, whether it's the original trilogy and bringing an end to the Sith, or, the Sith coming back again, like the stakes were super high, and based off of what happens, you're saving the galaxy or you're not. And it's the only galaxy you know of. Well, when you introduce another galaxy, it's like, okay, well, that means the stakes weren't as high because there's other groups of people. It's not like everyone was in jeopardy by the outcome of this, because these people in this other galaxy, whatever happens in our original galaxy doesn't impact them really at all. So it kind of dilutes the stories we already have and makes them not as important. I mean, obviously they're still important, but not as impactful to the universe.
Yeah.
So that's my only hesitation with it. But in terms of stories, I think it opens it up for great potential. I see more positives than negatives with opening to a new galaxy, but that's just kind of my perspective.
If it's done correctly and it's not just like a rabbit hole.
Well, but it's good that even if it's not done correctly, then it doesn't impact. If you set it in this other galaxy, it doesn't impact what we've gotten so far, which is nice.
I mean, yeah, that's true. And I do think, going off of, your idea of like a testing zone, I mean, you create a series where it's, 8 episodes all in that new galaxy, and none of them are connected.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people know that, hey, you can sit and watch them in any order that you want, because they are all, they're 45 minutes long, and it's 15 minutes, first 15 minutes introduction, 15 minutes of, crescendo, and, and really, the meat, and then 15 minutes of putting that baby to bed. And and that's it. And so, you'll get the whole essay right there in 45 minutes. And then the next week you move on to a whole new, writer. And, but it's 8 different stories that all deal with the same galaxy, and maybe they refer to each other a little bit, but ultimately they're standalone stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it would give you an idea of, oh, people really enjoyed episode 3. Oh, well, this was what episode, here was the writer, here was the here was the storyline to it. Okay, well, if they liked that, let's try to expand on that. Or they really liked episodes 3, 5, and 8, like the characters and this or whatever. You know what? Let's figure out a way. How can we bring these characters together in a larger forum within that galaxy? Because you've already laid the groundwork that, hey, these 8 episodes all take place in the same galaxy.
Yeah.
So now to bring those characters from those 3 episodes in, you already know that they're in the same time, frame. Like, that's easy enough to just, all right, they all met up at a cantina, or, these 2 met at the cantina, and then they flew over to this planet where, someone else was, however the story you want to go. But it would open it then to, your point of it being a testing pad for, all right, what stories hit, which ones don't.
Yep.
And then you could expand.
I just hope that it doesn't come also a dumping ground for anything that's like unexplainable in our known universe of Star Wars, just gets dropped off here. For instance, like, all right, we had Ahsoka in Rebels. but we never heard about her in the original trilogy. So where was she during this whole thing? Oh, she was in the other galaxy. Like, it's kind of a
Yeah, that,
explanation.
yeah. Yep.
And my the
Yeah,
only other
you don't want a ton of Jedis like all of a sudden showing up,
to
be
show
like, Order 66. I heard whispers.
Quinlan Voss, the path
I
led to another galaxy. Quinlan
I
Voss is
heard
there.
whispers and I got the out of there, man.
Yeah.
First bus out of town, I was on it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
And the only other thing I'm concerned about too is, depending on how far we go into this new galaxy, if things start not actually feeling like Star Wars, because we know from interviews with like Kathleen Kennedy and some of the other higher ups, like they want to kind of move away from the whole George Lucas stuff. Like they want to separate Star Wars one way or another from George Lucas's vision and go their direction.
Yeah.
So like, does this mean like they're kind of jumping ship and going into this whole new galaxy and they can do the stories how they wanted to? So just a couple of things I fear with the new galaxy, but I think overall, I think the potential there is a lot better. And as long as you have people like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, Bryce Dallas Howard, Deborah Chow, all these people, you're going to get great stories. And when it comes down to it, like that's really what's important, is having good quality stories that we want to watch. So
I think the best way to explain the potential of the new galaxies is cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. Cautious because of some of the content we've been receiving.
Yeah. Like,
and knowing that Disney is, their name is still tied to all of it.
That's, yeah, like you're caught, like it, the cautious part is, what stories are we getting? Who's the storyteller? How far, how outlandish, how removed from that suspension of disbelief are we?
Yeah. Disney acquiring Star Wars was a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. So, so that's the cautious part. Is the optimistic part is that none of the cautious stuff will come true. Yeah, I mean, that's where you're at, but you have to just kind of go into it. You can't just, blind faith. They're gonna, it'll be fine. They're gonna tell a great story. No, you cannot do that, because then you wind up with The Mandalorian season 2.5.
Well, and I think it's good. I mean, as weird as it sounds, I think it's good that we've gotten some Star Wars stuff that's like, because it means that just because you put Star Wars name on it doesn't mean that it's going to do well. So that doesn't mean you can just make anything that you want.
I think it opened the eyes to the Disney executives of, hey, listen, like, you can't slap Star Wars on a pet rock and expect me to jump over the moon.
People are passionate about this. People, you don't want to have expectations, but people have expectations about Star Wars and what you get out of it. So I mean, it's good to have failures, because it keeps the company in line to make sure, okay, we got to pay attention to some of these things and make sure.
And you have to, and when you put a show out there, when you put a movie out there, you have to realize that every fan has their vision for how this story should go.
Yeah.
Especially if you take a known quantity in a revered character, or a character that multiple people know, read books about, or saw throughout various mediums, like different shows or anything. When they become invested in these characters, they now have ideas for how these stories should be portrayed. And if you're close, you may not be spot on with every aspect of a story that a fan wanted to see. But if you're over 80%, 85%, you are close enough to where they are going to enjoy it. If you go take some liberties with the story, and even and they could just be perceived liberties. Somebody took offense to it, like, well, Boba would never do that. You've lost them. They don't know what the hell Boba would do or not do, but in their mind,
right,
he wouldn't do that. And and so, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, Boba, his first time on screen, he was on screen for what, 15 minutes in that movie?
right.
Maybe. And he became so beloved for 10, 15 minutes of screen time that you better not mess his story up.
How much do you think of that revolved around his appearance? Because he just looked like a badass character.
Oh, I think it was the positioning of the character was one, like the character himself, how he looked was a badass, and then the positioning of where he was, because he wasn't on one of the sides. I mean, he was pretty much in a focal point, and
Right.
that like if they're going to take a screenshot of Vader, you also see Boba. He doesn't get cut out. Yeah, that's like like a family picture.
Right.
If you're near the if you're near the outside, you might get snipped. When they're kind of shrinking that up and getting making sure. But if
you're right on the shoulder of Vader,
if you're right in the middle, that's it. Like you're in the middle of the picture. It's kind of hard to cut you out of the picture.
You're a little important.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I think of like Return of the Jedi and how well he didn't die, because now Book of Boba Fett, we know he didn't die, but how he got dismissed, kind of like, oh, he was nothing. And only having a few minutes of screen time, and how his apparent death at the time came about. It's like, how did this character become so popular, so intriguing?
Yeah.
And there was a mystery to him. There's an element of mystery to him. And I think a lot of it was his appearance and his stature, or connection with Vader. So it's just something fascinating.
Yep.
But going back to your point before we got on Boba, I think if you have people like Dave Filoni, you can absorb misses because people already have this trust to him. I mean, let's be real. George Lucas wasn't perfect. Like in his movies or in what he controlled. Greg is like, none of this. This is blasphemous. I will not listen. But I mean, like, he was part of the prequels, and you have lines like, I don't like sand. Like,
you have characters like Jar Jar.
You have characters like Jar Jar. So, but because you're George Lucas, you're allowed to have these kind of misses, and you'll still have the complete trust of Star Wars fans on what you're going to bring out next. Dave Filoni, I think, is in that same realm.
I think Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have that.
As of right now, they have that. So if you just allow them to take it, you can take risks. Have them do things that are like obscure. People will still trust them because they already have a track of great content. So I think it's just putting the right people in the right positions will allow Star Wars to just, boom and be successful.
Yep. And I think not doing too much, not coming out with too much content, and that Disney has, they've looked at that, and we kind of overdid it with, everything that we were kind of bringing out. It's like, let's take our time and, produce the right content.
Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
I agree. So hopefully that's the direction we'll go. We'll see. I mean, we got more shows coming. Dave Filoni has a film coming. There's a couple films that should be coming up, but we'll just have to wait and see. Going back to Ahsoka, and it being a live action versus an animation, because we know it's kind of like a continuation of Rebels. Do you think like where you've ranked them, we'll say rank them, do you think one, it going from animation to live action influenced that at all? Did that hinder that situation? And two, we know Dave Filoni before this show started made the point that you don't need to watch Rebels to understand what's going on in the show. Did him saying that kind of hinder the reception potentially received from this show? So that's kind of like a 2-question part. You can choose either one to answer first.
So I don't think him saying that you don't need to watch Rebels before you watch Ahsoka, I don't think that hindered anything. Because for the most part, you really didn't need to watch Rebels to gather what they were, you
To
wouldn't have been
understand the
lost. Yeah,
story.
you wouldn't have been lost. Because it wasn't like it wasn't like they started in the middle of a Rebels story. I mean, I guess technically, yes, because Ezra and Thrawn being gone, but there was no context that you really missed. There would have been subtle details. There would have been some specifics that you may have overlooked had you not watched Rebels. There were things like in Ahsoka that you could tie back to Rebels and go, oh, okay. Yeah. But they weren't vital to the story in Ahsoka. It was just like nice little Easter eggs that you could collect. So I don't think that. And then what was the first question was
going from animation to live action. So for people that watched Rebels, did changing it to live action impact anything?
Not for me. It didn't. I mean, other than like obviously like the battles, but that's true for anything. I mean, look at Clone Wars. When that was the battles in Clone Wars compared to some of the other battles we've seen in live action, but it's what you're able to do on the animation side of things as opposed to CGI and live action.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I didn't really feel like there was anything missed. I mean, we discussed would have been nice to have Zeb, but that also needs to be done in the right way. You can't just parade him out there as, hey, look who we found.
Right.
His character has to make sense.
They did mention what he's doing. And we saw in Mandalorian kind of what he's doing too.
Yeah.
So
that would be, so I mean, that would be nice. And then you and I kind of, we, off camera, we were, messaging back and forth about, Kane and Jerry,
yeah. Oh, let's dive into that. So,
and, and that potential to bring to live action, because I think that character, that situation would be very interesting to bring from the animation side to live action.
Yeah. And using Freddie Prinze Jr.
would be nice. I don't think I don't think it would happen. I think he'd be done.
From what he said, he doesn't want.
Yeah,
he's done.
But like we had said, I mean, like I had mentioned, it doesn't need you don't like. It doesn't do the character of Kane and Jarrus justice, nor does it really propel a story forward to have him in any scene other than like a quick, maybe he's in for an episode, bouncing here and there, but screen time total 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Total, like just to provide one last training session
Yeah.
to Ezra and Sabine and maybe Jason. Yeah. It would be, that, kind of like you saw with Anakin's hologram walking around and giving Ahsoka that training lesson. Have him do that, and then provide the characters of Rebels that last little bit of closure.
Mhm.
Because the way it played out, and it was a fantastic scene, but there was no closure for him. And not that there's always closure for anybody. I just, the sentimental side, you can do one last training and then you have, the closure, and then one last really important lesson that he gives to Ezra. And, because your idea I thought was fantastic with the world between worlds.
Yeah. And we'll get to that in a second. So you sent the interview that Freddie Prinze Jr. was having. I can't remember who he was interviewing with. And I agree with Freddie Prinze Jr. and what he was saying. Like, the more he's brought back, the more it lessens, or not less, like lowers the impact of Kanan Jarrus's character within the story. I agree with him.
Yeah.
So you want to try to not bring,
but I also think he's full of shit. I want to see him.
But he's, I mean, and in that interview he talked about, like, he didn't want to come back for Bad Batch, but he came back for Bad Batch. He didn't want to come.
Favor.
Yeah, he didn't come back for Rise of Skywalker, but he came for his voice with the whole Rey at, confronting the Emperor or Palpatine at the end there. So I agree with him on that, but I also understand that not everyone has really watched Rebels or Clone Wars. So there's a lot of people out there that don't really know who this character is, which maybe bringing him back might, you bring him back and then all those people are like, okay, well, who is this guy? Like, why does it even matter? Like, the people that are close to him are the ones that actually dedicated their time into Rebels and whatnot. But having a dead character stay dead is far more impactful. Like, don't bring him back in any ways, because that was so tragic on how it happened that it makes it great. It makes it, it makes it impactful. And you're like, ugh, I want more of them. Well, in real life, when someone dies, they're gone. You want more of them, but you never get more of them outside of the things that they left behind. So to your point, having kind of like a message, kind of like how Ahsoka saw Anakin, is one way you can do that and it still be meaningful. But what you and I were talking about, I think there's a way that you can bring him in and still have it be impactful and not hindering what we have from him in the past. And that's, you wanted to see him as a Force ghost. Like, if you
I brought it up. Like, that was, I brought it up, but the more I've thought about it, having him as a Force ghost, I think would really diminish, his death and, and how he died, how sudden it was, because then it's, well, okay, when did he have time to make himself a Force? Like, how did he,
where did he get that?
How did he learn? How did, how did
he
do this? I mean, it was, but I think him providing one last training session, a hologram, he could do a hologram at any time and just save it, and maybe Chopper has it. And
and that's another way to do it, because either a hologram or Force ghost. But I agree, like, where did he ever have the training to become a Force ghost? Because only like Yoda and Obi-Wan and all
Qui-Gon
them.
couldn't even do it.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Well,
and
no,
now
Obi-Wan Kenobi, we saw him as a Force ghost, so he did learn how to do it.
oh, that's right. No, he doesn't know how to come back from getting stabbed by a lightsaber like everyone else
Everyone
does
else
now.
survives except for him.
Yeah, everyone else.
But I think where you can make it work. So throughout the Ahsoka show, one of the big kind of messages is Ahsoka needs to get over the past because she's holding on deeply what happened to Anakin, and she obviously blames herself one way or another for that outcome. She's like, maybe if I stayed with him, things would be different. And Ezra is very similar in that regard, because when you watch him in Rebels, like in season 1, it was a big focus. Like, I need to know what happened to my parents. Like, what happened to my parents? What happened to my parents? I need closure on that. And now it's like, well, what there was another thing he was holding on to. What I'm trying to remember. I'm from the Rebels show.
Parents. Kanan.
Well, Kanan's another thing. Anyways, what I was getting at is you could have. So right now, Ezra wants to go back with Kanan. He wants to save him or whatnot. So you could have a situation where you have the world between worlds. He rescued Ahsoka. Now maybe he's like, oh, well, maybe I need to go back and rescue Kanan. And then this is where you kind of insert Kanan and being like, no, like, you need to let go of the past. What has happened, like the fall of the Empire, occurred congruently because I passed, one way or another. The way things unfolded allowed for the events to happen to what they are today. And if you come back and change that, then who knows what would happen. So if you insert Kanan, whether it's like a hologram, to be like, let go. So maybe Ezra's like using the world between worlds and he's right there about to bring Kanan out, but then he remembers or sees Kanan one way or another, which moves him forward from that.
I think there's a way in which you can tastefully bring him back and get some of that closure for these characters, and for some of the fans of Rebels. I mean, some fans of Rebels, they weren't able to get their closure. Even though it's an animated series, some people, they didn't get their closure.
Yep.
So it provides that little bit, and like a 10-minute screen time bounce between a couple different scenes that allow him closure with all the different members of the Ghost. So I think it's got to be tastefully done though. So otherwise, to Freddie Prinze Jr.'s point, you start to kind of chip away at the character and the purpose of the character.
All the Rebel characters, because Sabine really holds on to a lot of her past and kind of prevents her from progressing forward. Like I said, with Ahsoka, it did, and Ezra, it has. And I think that's kind of symbolic towards Star Wars fans too, because we base,
everything's off the original trilogy.
Everything's off the original.
Everything's off the past.
If it impacts one way or another in a way that we don't want it to, we hold on to that past and we're like, nope, we don't like it because, my perspective is different on that.
Yep.
So it's kind of like a message to the viewers as well. Like, let's move forward.
Hey,
like, we don't have new content is okay.
New adventures, like be open to new adventures.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, yeah.
Life has to be lived moving forward, not
Yeah.
living in the
Yeah.
past.
He could break the fourth wall and just look right at it, right at the screen. Listen,
Move
you
on.
gotta be open. You know, be like, this guy talking to me?
Because there's a lot of good stories that can be told still. But
Mhm.
if you hold on to the past, it can make a really good story not be as great.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
because you
because you could
can't
look
get
at the
past your
story and
own.
go, well, I mean, it's all right, but it's no a New Hope. It's no Empire. It's
Right.
no whatever.
Right.
I
So maybe
get
that's
that, but it's not supposed to be. It's,
right.
it's supposed to stand on its own.
Right.
Yeah. So that I don't know. I mean, it's not make or break. I just think that the opportunity is there to do something like that with you've brought all of the characters from Rebels, all the main characters from Rebels to live action, and through his voice, you've brought Kane and Jarrus. So you have all of the elements.
Yep.
Now it's just a matter of making sure that the recipe is a good one.
Yep. And I just want to say to everyone that like has issues with Ahsoka, give it a second season, because I really feel like this show needs that second season to really like solidify what's going on here,
Mm-hmm.
because the stakes don't really seem that high right now, because all that's really happening is that like Ezra and Thrawn are back.
Yeah.
That's what and Ahsoka and Sabine are gone. Like that's all we have. And people are like, well, there weren't many stakes jeopardized in this situation. Well, Thrawn being back is huge.
Yeah.
That's a threat to what we all know.
Yeah.
So I say we have to give this one a season 2 before you make any judgments in that regard. Because I think things are about to get interesting once season 2 comes along, and I think we're going to see some devastation potentially, but
Oh yeah. I think it'll be, it may move up the charts. It,
yeah.
like it might, we'll see. But it
Or,
might jump over season 2 of Ahsoka season 2 might land above Mandalorian season 2.
and I really hope they come back with Balin's story one way or another, whether it's in Ahsoka or something like.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most fascinating thing to me in this show, was where that was going, and we haven't gotten it, and it's got to be leading somewhere. So whether you bring in a new actor or figure something out to progress that story,
Mm-hmm.
I think that in my eyes, that's really important.
Agreed.
All right. Well, I know there's so much more we could talk about Ahsoka, but we are already at the 2-hour mark.
Man,
So we're at that wrap up.
time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies too when we haven't caught up with you. So it's been great having you back. Hopefully so we've moved to Thursdays now. Hopefully the scheduling can help us out. For all of us, I think it'll make it a little easier to get conversations going again. Dustin was in New York, so he's just getting back. He wasn't able to join.
New York.
And I know Zach is on the cusp of coming back, based off of everything going on in his life. I think he said starting in November, he should be more available. So we'll be getting the crew back here pretty soon. And I'm sure we'll talk more Ahsoka. Maybe we get more into the nitty gritty specifics going forward until other shows come out. What were you going to say?
Yeah, give me time to to rewatch, maybe on a big screen this time, a larger screen than
Instead
just my my little phone. Yeah,
I still want to go back and watch Ahsoka from start to end, like binge the whole thing. I haven't done that yet.
What would you need? 5 hours? 6?
You could probably do it in 6.5.
Yeah.
Because most of them were like 40-minute episodes, I want to say.
That's what I was thinking.
I think they were like 2 50-minute, but most of them were like 30
Yeah.
to 40.
So you could just fire right through. Yeah. But
Yeah. So I really want to do that. And I think that'll help me get a more holistic perspective of the show. But
true.
all right. Well, I'll just talk through our social media handles really quick. So you can find us on Twitter at DetBlockAA23pod, on Instagram at detention_block_AA_23, and then our Facebook group and YouTube channels, Detention Block AA23, a Star Wars podcast. Bring us your likes, follows, downloads, subscriptions, comments, reviews, all of that. We greatly appreciate it. It helps get our name out there amongst the hundreds and hundreds of Star Wars podcasts out there. Anything you do, we appreciate. So, and we just love talking to you guys. Any final thoughts from you, Greg? No, nothing. God, I know we don't want to talk sports too much, but I hope the Packers turn it around. It's hard. It's hard to be a Wisconsin sports fan right now. There's a lot of frustrating things going on, but we'll get there. All right. Well,
that's why the Star Wars content needs to be on point.
Right. We need more. Well, not till 2024. I think that's let's see. Yeah. So Skeleton Crew, possibly 2024. It was originally supposed to be 2023. And then Andor season 2 and Acolyte in 2024. That's all we really have right now. So looking like next year, we're going to have to fill the content with video game talk, I guess. But anyways, thanks for listening in to us today. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. We look forward to next time. Thanks for listening in to 2 hours of us. Hopefully you were listening at it at 1.5 or 2 times speed. So a lot faster. But with that, I'm Mike, joined with Greg. And as always, may the force be with you.